Good morning, everybody. This is Chris Morford. A few days back, Corian and I posted about our findings on the 1612 map of Samuel de Champlain. This is his map of New France, and there's some connections we found there between Ursa Major, which he appears to have used the form of that constellation to hide the word Menorah, and to lay the final star of that constellation right around the Mahone Bay area. Quick background on the myth of Ursa Major. This is the Great Bear, often called the Mother Bear of Arcadia. As you know, New France, Nova Scotia, was once named Arcadia. And this goes back to a nymph named Callisto, who Zeus became enamored with. He changed form and seduced her. There was a child born out of this union. His name was Arcas, and he became king of Arcadia. The name Arcadia goes back to the name Arcas, and the name Arcas goes back to the word for bear. So in a fit of jealousy, Hera discovers what has happened. This is Zeus's wife, Hera. She changes Callisto into a bear. Arcas is out hunting, and he almost shoots his own mother, not realizing she's been turned into a bear. Both of them are taken up to the skies and placed there as Ursa Minor and Ursa Major. So they became the mother and son bears of Arcadia in Greece, and there's a direct link then to the Arcadia of current-day Nova Scotia. There are quite a few clues in his map, but we're just going to focus on this for the moment. You can see the key at the bottom of the map, where he assigns a letter to different places all over the map with the place names listed at the bottom there. And if you pick out the letters that spell Manora and find them on his map, you see that they take the form of the constellation Ursa Major, with the 3 signature stars in the handle and the 4 forming the sort of bowl of the ladle there. Now the last letter, the furthest to the right, happens to be the letter R, and strangely enough, Champlain seems to have singled out this area. You can see if you lay a pentagram over the map, the bottom points will reach to the very edge of the bottom of the map. One left arm will touch the middle of the sun, right to his compass rose there. The center of that goes right up his compasses, and the tip will land right on this little island of Sessembre. You can see the R point just above and to the right there. In our book, The Jerusalem Files, Corian and I explored 2 possibilities about the location of Mahone Bay on this map. I urge you to go and read that and to make your own decision about it. We present evidence for both sides. We're going to focus in this video on one possibility, that the R point is in fact Mahone Bay. We include this as a possible location for Mahone Bay based on a number of factors, including that Champlain seems to have made this the focal point of his map. And the visual clues, it's strikingly similar to the coastline around Mahone Bay. You can see the familiar maple leaf shape of the bay in this comparison here. You can see off to the left the Le Havre River kind of snaking its way up into the mainland there. Now when you compare the coastlines that Champlain drew on his map with the actual coastlines on, say, Google Earth or something, you'll find there's very little similarity between the map and reality, which is completely understandable. He had a huge area to map out in limited time and resources. It really stands out as being highly accurate by comparison, as if he had taken his time, as if he had spent some time here. As an example, let's take that little island of Sessembre. Some say that's modern-day Sambro, but I can't see any similarities to the coastline around Sambro Island. it does not seem like the same area by any stretch of the imagination to me. Now this R point signifies the final star in the handle of Ursa Major, the end of the tail of the bear, and it's a star called Al-Qaid, and this means the leader. And you can actually follow the curve of these stars right down to Antares and Scorpio, which we use to locate the money pit using Nolan's cross. But take note of how this star sits right at the tip of the sickle being held by the figure of Boots. And recall how we discussed how the figure of Boots, the constellation, is one of the shepherds in Poussin's painting. He's the shepherd standing with one leg on the rock, pointing at the inscription on the tomb. Kneeling shepherd next to him is Hercules. The two figures are pointing to the inscription on the tomb, which of course reads, "Et in Arcadia ego." The kneeling shepherd is pointing to the letter R in Arcadia. Champlain's map was created in 1612, so way before this painting came about. So what if decoding the message here is really that simple? Is Poussin just saying, look for the R in Arcadia? Look for the R point on a map of Arcadia, referring to Champlain's map. Now, to discover what you just might find there, you'll have to look to the skies in between the constellations of Boats and Hercules and see what lies in that portion of the sky. But more about that in the Jerusalem Files. Now, what about that sickle that ends at the R point, the last star in Ursa Major? Much has been said about the shadow on the tomb of the kneeling shepherd's arm, and how inconsistent it is with the actual arm of the kneeling figure. People have often wondered how Poussin, an absolute master painter, could have made such an unrealistic shadow, and many claim that it looks very much like the sickle or the scythe of death itself, and that is the true message on the tomb, that even in Arcadia, even in paradise, death is present. But it may well be that this is the sickle of Boots, and that the R point in Arcadia is in fact that star, Al-Qaid, sitting right at the tip of that sickle. So let's talk more about Al-Qaid, the star that forms the last letter of the Menorah. Al-Qaid happens to be one of 15 very special stars called Bahanian fixed stars. Bahanian stars were useful not only for navigation but in magical applications. These were seen as auspicious stars, and their positions in the night sky could foretell whether an event would be successful or a disaster. Al-Qaid is listed among them, and each of these stars is given their own special symbol. Here we have a list of the symbols from the book by Cornelius Agrippa, published in 1531. Take a look at the symbol for Al-Qaid. Tell me if it doesn't look a bit familiar. It looks to me to be a lot like a menorah. 6 branches up the side and a central spine. That'd be astounding if Champlain used Ursa Major to spell out the word Manora along the coast and place the last star, Al-Qaid, over Mahone Bay, the place where we say the Menorah was once buried. And he marked that spot with a star whose known symbol was the Menorah. Here's another odd coincidence. We often hear that the name Mahone came from a type of French boat that was used extensively in the bay, a boat that could be easily navigated through shallow waters. Did you know that Mahone is an old Celtic family name? It's a name that means bear, and not just any bear. It refers to those celestial bears, Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. You may know people with the last name McMahon. Mahone means son of the great bear. Mahone is the mother bear. So Mahone Bay may very well be referring to Ursa Major itself, the same bay that Champlain outlined with that constellation and marked the hiding place of the original temple menorah with the star whose symbol was a menorah. Corian found this amazing fact as well. Mahone is almost a perfect anagram of the name Menorah. It's just missing one letter. Of course, we can guess which letter is missing. It's the letter R that the shepherds are pointing to. Add that to Mahone and you get Menorah. Now, this is just one example of the connection between Ursa Major and the Menorah. And maybe you find this convincing, or maybe not. You can write it off to coincidence. It's only a single example. But what if there was a second example of a pairing of Ursa Major and the Menorah? In the town of Stratford-upon-Avon, you'll find this beautiful little church with a pentagram window. It is the alleged resting place of the body of William Shakespeare. This is Holy Trinity Church, and in addition to his alleged gravesite, you'll find a memorial plaque dedicated to the great poet. You'll find a bust of William Shakespeare here, encased within an arch, above which are 7 rosettes. I can't help but notice that this could form a 7-branched menorah, with the central stem following the seam of his shirt. But we're going to focus on the dedicatory plaque located just under the bust. Much has been written about the lines of verse in this plaque. We're going to focus on the top right here. You see how the word marinem forms the word menorum, Latin for menorah, in reverse. This idea was first put forth by Peter Amundsen in his books and video series, which I highly recommend. The discovery was by his friend Frode. Now, if we continue this line of verse and line of thinking, from right to left, the words Socratem art marinem become an anagram for menorum e mater arctos, which means the menorah from the mother bear being Ursa Major, of course. And so here we find the same pairing of the menorah with Ursa Major that Champlain promoted on his map. Okay, so now we have 2 examples of the pairing of the Ursa Major constellation with the menorah. This was fairly convincing to me. If there was a 3rd example of this pairing, that would surely seal the deal. Well, my friend and co-researcher and co-author Corian Mall directed my attention to just such a 3rd connection in the most unlikely of places. In 1924, French author and detective story novelist Maurice Leblanc published the following story. It's called The Countess of Cagliostro versus Arsène Lupin. Arsène Lupin is Leblanc's version of a French Sherlock Holmes. The Countess is the alleged daughter of the real-life alchemist and Freemason Giuseppe Balsamo, which is an anagram for Absalom. He's also known as the Count Cagliostro. The story follows the search for a menorah, a 7-branched golden candlestick which hides the secret to the treasure of the French kings. Sound familiar? What's more, they are aided in their search by a treasure map based on the constellation of Ursa Major. In this version of the mystery, the star Alcor and the handle of the Big Dipper is the key. In the novel, 7 different abbeys form the constellation on the ground. The map is used to point to a certain star where the treasure is located. The detective derives the name Alcor from a secret phrase which is discovered: ad lapidem curiat olim regina, or once upon a time the queen ran towards the stone. We found an odd connection between the real Cagliostro and Champlain. On the left you see the seal of the real historical figure of the Count Cagliostro, and on the right the mysterious glyph that Champlain uses on his map. The angle of the arrow and the angle of the line in the glyph are exactly the same, 51 degrees. We believe this symbolism and this number lead to an even deeper mystery. You can read about that in the Jerusalem Files. So now we have 3 solid examples of a connection between a treasure map, the constellation Ursa Major, and the golden menorah of Solomon's temple. Would you believe me if I could provide a 4th example? Would that erase all doubt? Would it at least make you think that this is beyond coincidence and that there's something going on here? This is Abbé Henri Boudet. He was the priest of Rennes-les-Bains, an area not far from Rennes-le-Château. In 1886, he publishes a book called The True Celtic Language. In it, he studies megalithic sites around the area and puts forth the hypothesis that there was an ancient language consisting of Hebrew, Basque, Punic, Celtic, that all combined to form a now forgotten language. In the 1978 edition of this work, we find an introduction in which is repeated the Alcor mystery, the same mystery presented in the novel by Maurice Leblanc, only here it's not presented as a work of fiction, it's presented as reality. Oddly enough, this introduction is written by none other than the infamous Pierre Plantard, the self-described Grand Master of the Priory of Sion, the man behind the mystery of Rennes-le-Château, the same tale that inspired the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail. The very same book that provided much of the background material for Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, the book and the movie. The books put forth the idea that the Holy Grail represented the union of Jesus and Mary Magdalene and their offspring, a royal lineage, a sang real. I hope these connections in this video get you thinking more about this mystery. You can read more about it in our book, The Jerusalem Files. Check it out at www.thejerusalemfiles.com. Thank you for watching.